Victor Wembanyama is what happens when a sport encounters a possibility it was never designed to contain. Not just a talented player. Not just another highly drafted prospect surrounded by impossible expectations. Basketball has seen those before. The NBA has spent decades producing stars, giants, athletic anomalies, and revolutionary scorers. What makes Victor Wembanyama different is the same thing that made J. Robert Oppenheimer terrifying to the world that created him. He forces people to confront the consequences of something that should not logically exist, but does anyway. In July 1945, deep in the deserts of New Mexico, Oppenheimer stood watching the first successful nuclear explosion in human history. The Trinity test lasted less than a second, but the meaning of that second permanently altered civilization. For the first time, humanity understood that it had crossed a threshold that could never be uncrossed. War, politics, global power, even the psychological relationship between mankind and technology changed instantly because one invention shattered the limits people previously assumed were permanent. That moment matters because history rarely prepares itself emotionally for revolutionary things before they arrive. The NBA had no emotional preparation for Victor Wembanyama either. For decades, basketball evolved around a set of biological assumptions that everyone accepted without needing to say them out loud. Extremely tall players protected the rim, rebounded, and operated near the basket. Smaller players handled the ball, initiated offense, and created from the perimeter. Size came with trade-offs. Height reduced mobility. Length reduced fluidity. The structure of the sport itself was built around those compromises because the human body historically demanded them. Then Wembanyama arrived, looking like a violation of the compromise itself. 7'4". Guard footwork, wing movement, elite shot blocking instincts, perimeter shot creation, transition handling, step-back jumpers, defensive range that seems to consume entire sections of the court. He does not move like previous giants, because previous giants were still recognizable within the old framework of basketball physics. Wembanyama often looks as though the framework itself has malfunctioned. This is why the reactions around him feel strangely similar to the reactions scientists, politicians, and military leaders had toward nuclear technology during the 1940s. The fear is not necessarily about what currently exists. The fear is about implication. If this is possible now, what becomes possible next? That question changes everything. When Oppenheimer led the Manhattan Project, the true terror of the atomic bomb was not simply its destructive capacity. Humanity had always built more destructive weapons over time. The deeper fear came from the realization that technological evolution had crossed into territory where previous assumptions about limitation no longer applied. Suddenly, the future became unpredictable in a completely new way. Victor Wembanyama creates that same psychological disruption inside basketball. Because his existence challenges the league's long-standing understanding of what a basketball player is supposed to be physically capable of doing. He is not simply tall and skilled. Basketball has seen skilled big men before. The difference is the scale of simultaneity. Wembanyama combines traits that historically existed separately because human biomechanics made combining them nearly impossible. Players his height were never supposed to move this fluidly laterally. Players with his reach were never supposed to handle space this comfortably away from the basket. Players with his frame were never supposed to recover defensively the way he does after appearing completely out of position. Watch him for long enough and something unusual starts happening psychologically. The court begins to look smaller around him. Passing angles disappear that should logically remain open. Shooters release the ball believing they have created enough separation only for his wingspan to erase the shot anyway. Guards attack the paint, see daylight for half a second, then suddenly realize the geometry has changed while they were moving. Wembanyama does not simply defend possessions. He alters spatial confidence itself. That is what truly revolutionary figures do. They force everyone around them to recalculate reality in real time. The most important part of the Victor Wembanyama phenomenon is that even experienced NBA players occasionally look confused while sharing the floor with him. Not intimidated, confused. That distinction matters. Basketball players are used to extraordinary athletes. The league has always contained impossible people. Shaquille O'Neal overwhelmed opponents with physical force that looked almost unfair. Stephen Curry stretched shooting range beyond what defensive systems were designed to handle. LeBron James combined size, intelligence, and athleticism into something that controlled entire eras of basketball. But even those players still existed within recognizable dimensions of the sport. Coaches could theoretically explain what they were seeing, even if stopping it became nearly impossible. Wembanyama creates a different reaction. At times, he appears less like the next evolutionary step and more like a category error. The human brain builds expectations through repetition. Players subconsciously process spacing, timing, and movement based on thousands of prior experiences accumulated over entire careers. Guards learn how long it takes defenders to rotate. Big men learn what kinds of angles remain vulnerable. Shooters develop instinctive awareness for which releases can safely clear contests. NBA basketball operates at elite speed, partly because everyone involved shares the same unconscious map of what is physically possible. Wembanyama disrupts that map constantly. There are possessions where opposing players make technically correct decisions and still fail because the assumptions underneath those decisions no longer apply against him. A drive that normally creates enough separation suddenly does not. A pass that has worked for 10 years suddenly gets intercepted by limbs extending from impossible distances. A pull-up jumper released against any normal defender becomes blockable against Wembanyama because his recovery range violates conventional timing expectations. This is what made Oppenheimer's world so unstable after the atomic bomb. The old calculations stopped working. Military doctrines that had governed global conflict for generations suddenly became incomplete because a single technological breakthrough changed the scale of consequence itself. Political leaders were forced into a psychological environment where traditional assumptions about war no longer guaranteed survival. The existence of nuclear weapons reshaped strategy before they were even used again, because every government understood the same terrifying reality. The framework had changed permanently. Basketball is experiencing a smaller but conceptually similar adjustment with Wembanyama. Not because he is already the best player in the world. He is not. Not yet. The truly unsettling part is that he represents the possibility that the traditional limitations governing player development may no longer be reliable predictors of the future. For years, scouts treated extreme height cautiously because history taught them that giant players eventually broke down physically. Durability concerns, mobility limitations, joint stress, and offensive predictability all functioned as natural balancing mechanisms against size. Wembanyama threatens to destabilize those assumptions because his skill development occurred before his body fully inherited the restrictions previous generations of big men faced. He grew up training perimeter movement patterns instead of being trapped exclusively near the basket. That detail may end up changing basketball development globally. Young players watching Wembanyama are not simply seeing a unique talent, they are seeing permission. Coaches who once redirected unusually tall children toward rigid interior roles may eventually stop doing so altogether. Development systems built around historical physical expectations could slowly begin reorganizing themselves around entirely different possibilities. That is exactly how revolutionary figures alter history, not merely through personal dominance but through imitation. Oppenheimer did not permanently change the world because one atomic bomb existed. He changed it because the successful existence of the bomb guaranteed future replication. Once humanity proved something was possible, every major power on Earth reorganized around that knowledge. The NBA may eventually experience a version of that same chain reaction. Because somewhere right now, there are teenagers watching Victor Wembanyama and realizing that the old rules governing size and skill no longer feel absolute. There is another reason the Oppenheimer comparison fits Victor Wembanyama so precisely, and it has nothing to do with statistics. It has to do with atmosphere. Before the first atomic bomb was ever used in war, its mere existence had already transformed the psychology of everyone involved with it. Scientists understood they were participating in something historically irreversible. Military officials recognized that global power structures were about to mutate permanently. Even Oppenheimer himself famously quoted the Bhagavad Gita after witnessing the Trinity test. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." The line mattered because it captured a terrifying awareness that humanity had crossed a threshold faster than its moral imagination could process. Wembanyama creates a strangely similar emotional atmosphere around basketball. Not destruction, transformation. People around the NBA speak about him differently than they speak about normal prospects, because normal prospects belong to recognizable historical patterns. Analysts compare them to former stars, debate developmental timelines, and project strengths or weaknesses based on existing templates. With Wembanyama, those templates constantly fail. Every comparison feels incomplete. Too tall for the perimeter archetypes. Too fluid for the traditional center archetypes. Too coordinated for historical injury assumptions. Too defensively disruptive for conventional spacing logic. Even the language surrounding him often sounds less like sports analysis and more like scientists trying to describe an unstable experiment. Alien, unicorn, not human, built in a lab. Those phrases are revealing because they expose the same underlying psychological reaction. People instinctively describe things they cannot categorize through the language of abnormality. And the NBA has always struggled with players who arrive before the sport is conceptually ready for them. When Stephen Curry began launching high-volume threes from distances once considered irrational, many coaches initially treated the shots as bad basketball rather than evidence that the geometry of offense itself was changing. When Shaquille O'Neal dominated the league physically, teams spent years desperately searching for giant centers simply to absorb the damage he caused near the rim. Revolutionary players force systems into adaptation because refusing adaptation eventually becomes suicidal. Wembanyama may become the most extreme version of this process the league has ever seen, because if he fully succeeds, the developmental consequences could reshape the next generation of basketball entirely. Imagine what happens if a player standing over 7 feet tall proves capable of anchoring elite defense while simultaneously functioning as a perimeter creator, transition initiator, and high-level scorer without sacrificing mobility. Suddenly, every scouting department in the world begins searching for taller athletes with guard skills instead of treating those combinations as developmental anomalies. Youth academies reorganize training priorities. Coaches stop separating tall players from perimeter skill work at early ages. The prototype changes. And once the prototype changes, the sport itself changes with it. That is the true power of historical anomalies. Oppenheimer's bomb did not simply create a stronger weapon. It reorganized civilization around the possibility of stronger weapons forever. The NBA may eventually reorganize itself around the possibility that Wembanyama represents. You can already see fragments of this anxiety inside the league's defensive reactions to him. Opponents sometimes guard him with smaller defenders to disrupt his dribble while simultaneously sending secondary help because single coverage near the rim becomes dangerous once he establishes positioning. Traditional defensive categories start collapsing against him because he can punish entirely different kinds of matchups depending on where he catches the ball. Too slow, and he attacks space. Too small, and he shoots over the top. Too aggressive, and he manipulates length advantages around the basket. At his peak, Wembanyama may force basketball into a strategic dilemma similar to the one nuclear deterrence created in geopolitics. Every available answer carries unacceptable consequences. And that possibility is what makes him feel less like a future superstar and more like the arrival of a new basketball era before the league has psychologically adjusted to living inside it. The most unsettling possibility about Victor Wembanyama is not that he could dominate basketball. History has seen dominant players before. The unsettling possibility is that future generations may eventually look back at the modern NBA the same way pre-nuclear civilization looked after 1945. As a world operating under limitations people mistakenly believed were permanent. That is what Oppenheimer represented. Not merely destruction, but the moment humanity realized the boundaries of possibility had shifted forever. Wembanyama may become basketball's version of that realization. Not the end of the sport, the beginning of a completely different one.